Life in Ukraine. Before the shadows of war. What the world forgot. Before the world was consumed by news of war, there was a Ukraine most people forgot. A Ukraine of vibrant culture, extraordinary beauty, and a people that welcomed the world with open arms. But what happened to this Ukraine? And what did the world miss? These are the questions I want to ask today. A few years ago, Ukraine was one of Europe's fastest-growing travel destinations, attracting millions of tourists to cities like Kyiv, Lviv, and Odessa. People came for the stunning architecture, the rich history, the friendly locals, and the lively energy that filled the streets. Did you know that Ukraine, with its beautiful landscapes, historic landmarks, and thriving art scene, was one of the most sought-after places for cultural exploration in Europe? Tourists from all over the world were drawn to the golden domes of Kyiv's St. Sophia Cathedral and the charming cobblestone streets of Lviv. They sipped coffee in quaint cafes, explored vibrant markets, and marveled at the breathtaking natural beauty from the Carpathian Mountains to the Black Sea coast. Ukraine was a hidden gem, full of life and untold stories. But today, that image is rapidly fading. The world's attention has shifted, and what was once a bustling hub of culture and tourism has been overshadowed by conflict. So, why should we care? Because before the shadows of war began to cast over it, Ukraine was more than just a place. It was a symbol of resilience, creativity, and a spirit that still deserves to be remembered. Let's take a step back in time. Let me show you the Ukraine that existed before the shadow of war fell across it. Let's rediscover what the world seems to have forgotten. You might think you know Ukraine, but what you've seen on the news is only half the picture. There's a Ukraine that is disappearing, a Ukraine that many have forgotten, and today we're going to remember it before it's gone forever. Before the world was consumed by stories of conflict and destruction, Ukraine was a vibrant, welcoming country full of life, culture, and beauty. But now, the Ukraine that once existed seems like a distant memory. Ukraine, located in Eastern Europe, is the largest country entirely within Europe, stretching from the Black Sea in the south to the vast forests of the north. The land is rich with diversity, offering something for everyone. Whether it was the serene beaches along the Black Sea or the lush green landscapes of the Carpathian Mountains in the west, Ukraine was a place of natural beauty. The Carpathians alone, with their towering peaks, provided the perfect escape for anyone seeking a peaceful retreat in nature, while the winding rivers and charming villages dotted across the country brought out the best in Ukraine's rural charm. But it wasn't just the land that made Ukraine special, it was the people. Ukraine was known for its warmth, both in weather and in hospitality. The people were proud of their heritage and they welcomed anyone who showed interest in their culture. Cities like Kyiv, Lviv, and Odessa buzzed with activity. Kyiv, the capital, was a modern city with a rich history, where golden domes glistened against the skyline and the streets were filled with the sounds of lively markets and street musicians. Lviv, with its cobblestone streets and beautiful architecture, had a European feel, blending the best of Polish, Austrian, and Ukrainian influences. Everywhere you went, you could feel the energy, the passion that Ukrainians had for their music, food, and traditions. The food was hearty, flavorful, and often made with ingredients grown in the fertile soil of the land. There was an unspoken pride in every dish, every song, and every story shared. But as time passed, things started to change. Ukraine's vibrancy, its openness, its beauty, they all started to fade. Today, much of that spirit is lost, and we're left with only the echoes of what once was. But before we forget entirely, let's take a look back at the Ukraine we should never forget. Before the war, a nation. Full of life, at the heart of Ukraine was a country that had managed to balance modern life with an ancient history. A country that seemed to have it all. Ukraine was rich in tradition, but at the same time, it was always moving forward. In Kyiv, the capital, you could step into the magnificent St. Sophia's Cathedral, a place that stood for centuries, holding the weight of history in its golden domes. Walking through this stunning architectural wonder, you could almost feel the presence of generations past. But just a few blocks away, you would find some of the most modern, upscale stores in Eastern Europe, showcasing Ukraine's growth. As a contemporary nation, this blend of the old and the new was something you could feel all over Ukraine. It was a country proud of its roots, but also excited about what the future held. Ukraine was always alive with activity. In the streets, people bustled about their day, carrying on with their work, shopping, meeting friends for a quick coffee. The cafe culture was strong, especially in cities like Lviv, where you could sip a cup of strong Ukrainian coffee while watching the world go by. There was a certain energy in the air. People were busy living their lives, but there was always time for connection. Whether it was chatting with a stranger on the bus or gathering with friends for a meal, Ukrainians made sure to enjoy life as it came. There was a warmth in the way people interacted with each other, something that made you feel right at home. Ukrainian hospitality was something you could never forget. It wasn't just about being polite or offering a cup of tea, it was about generosity in its purest form. If you've never been invited into someone's home for a full banquet, then you haven't truly experienced Ukrainian hospitality. Let's just say that no matter how brief your stay, no matter if you were just passing by, you'd be treated like family. And I mean that literally. Expect plates of food piled high and stories shared that you'd never forget. This wasn't just about food, it was about making someone feel welcomed, about offering them a part of your heart. Ukrainians are known for their generosity, and they take great pride in it. Don't even try to refuse their hospitality. It's considered rude, and they'll insist. But Ukraine wasn't just a place of deep traditions and warm people. It was also a country of vibrant culture. Music, art, dance, and literature were all incredibly important to Ukrainians. Across the country, you could hear the sounds of traditional Ukrainian folk music, with its rich, melodic tones, mixed with modern pop and rock. In Lviv, people would gather in the town square to listen to street musicians or dance in celebration of a local festival. And it wasn't just the people who were passionate about their culture. Ukraine's history was woven into every part of its daily life. The country was home to incredible painters, writers, and dancers who shared their talents with the world. It wasn't uncommon to find a young Ukrainian artist showcasing their work in galleries, or a traditional Ukrainian band performing at a local venue. Ukraine was a place that embraced its artistic side, giving everyone the space to create and express themselves. Ukraine's influence stretched far beyond its borders. It wasn't just a country with a rich history. It was a country that was becoming an important player on the global stage. With a growing economy, an expanding tech sector, and a rising tourism industry, Ukraine was on the map, and it was only getting stronger. More people were discovering the beauty of Ukraine, whether it was the stunning architecture of Kyiv, the unique charm of Lviv, or the laid-back vibe of Odessa by the sea. Ukraine had a way of making people feel like they had found something special, something they hadn't expected. It was the kind of place where you could experience both history and modernity, tradition and innovation, all in one place. But as life in Ukraine seemed to be thriving, there was a growing undercurrent of tension. No one could have predicted what would soon come, but the country was about to change in ways that no one could have imagined. The vibrancy, the culture, the warmth, they were all at risk of disappearing, becoming just memories of a time before. It's a tragedy that so much of what made Ukraine special is now in danger of being forgotten. But we must remember it, because the story of Ukraine, the one before the war, is one that deserves to be told. Ukraine's rich history. Did you know that Ukraine has one of the oldest and richest histories in Europe? It's true. From the ancient Kievan Rus to the Cossack era, Ukraine's history shaped not only the country, but much of Eastern European culture. For centuries, Ukraine has been a land of great significance. Its history is full of fascinating stories, from the rise and fall of kingdoms to the warriors and artists who left their mark on the world. But Ukraine's history isn't just about battles and royal dynasties, it's about the people and the vibrant culture they built over centuries. The Kyiv Rus, which emerged around the 9th century, is often considered the foundation of modern-day Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus. At its peak, this medieval state was a powerful and influential entity in Eastern Europe, with Kyiv as its capital. The Kyiv Rus is important not only for its political power, but also for its cultural and religious legacy. It was in this period that Christianity was introduced to the region, laying the foundation for much of Ukraine's religious and cultural practices. The golden domes that adorn Ukrainian churches today, like those in Kyiv, are a direct link to this past. Fast forward a few hundred years, and you come to the era of the Cossacks. Ever heard of the Cossacks? They were the original Ukrainian rebels, but here's the kicker. They were known for their wild sense of humor and the best hospitality you could imagine. The Cossacks lived in the southern steppes of Ukraine and became famous for their fierce independence and warrior spirit. But they weren't all about fighting. The Cossacks had a strong community spirit, and they valued freedom above all else. They also had a deep respect for tradition, which is why their customs still live on today in places like Lviv. One of the most iconic symbols of Ukrainian culture is the Cossacks' colorful and spirited dance, known as the hopak. It's a high-energy dance filled with jumps, spins, and leaps, and it perfectly captures the Cossacks' lively and courageous spirit. These dances weren't just performed for entertainment. They were a way for the Cossacks to tell their stories, celebrate their victories, and unite their communities. And while the Cossack culture isn't as widespread as it once was, their influence can still be felt in many parts of Ukraine, especially in the traditions of hospitality and celebration. But the Cossack era wasn't just about culture and fun. It was also a time of great struggle. The Cossacks fought numerous wars to protect their land, their freedom, and their way of life. One of the most famous events in Cossack history was the Khmelnytsky Uprising in 1648, when the Cossacks rebelled against Polish rule, seeking independence for Ukraine. This was a turning point in Ukrainian history, as it marked the beginning of a long struggle for sovereignty and self-determination. Despite their brave efforts, Ukraine continued to face foreign invasions and domination throughout its history, from the Russian Empire to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Yet, through it all, the spirit of the people remained strong, and their culture continued to thrive. Ukraine's rich history also gave rise to a vibrant artistic and intellectual tradition. In the 19th century, Ukraine produced some of the most important writers and poets in Eastern Europe. Figures like Taras Shevchenko, considered the national poet of Ukraine, played a pivotal role in shaping the country's identity. Shevchenko's works often focused on the themes of freedom, justice, and the struggles of the Ukrainian people. His poems and paintings were a rallying cry for Ukrainians during times of oppression, and his legacy continues to inspire people. Today, Ukraine's cultural wealth isn't limited to literature. The country has also been home to some of the world's most celebrated artists, musicians, and dancers. Ukrainian folk music, with its distinctive melodies and instruments, tells the story of the land and its people. Ukrainian art is deeply connected to the land, with many artists drawing inspiration from the natural beauty of the country's fields, forests, and mountains. The folk traditions of Ukraine, including embroidery, pottery, and weaving, have been passed down through generations, creating a rich tapestry of cultural expression that remains strong today. In the cities of Ukraine, you can still see the remnants of this rich history. The streets of Kyiv, Lviv, and Odessa are filled with beautiful architecture that reflects the country's diverse cultural influences. From the Baroque churches of Kyiv to the grand theaters of Lviv, Ukraine's buildings tell the story of a people who have always appreciated beauty and artistry. This connection to the past is one of the things that made Ukraine so unique, a country where history and modern life existed side by side. Ukraine's deep cultural history shaped the vibrant, welcoming country it was before the war. It wasn't just a place on a map. It was a land of tradition, beauty, and spirit. The stories of the past are still alive today, carried in the hearts of the Ukrainian people, and though the country has faced countless challenges, it is this rich history that has helped its people remain resilient, proud, and ready to rebuild what was lost. Life in major cities. Before the war, life in Ukraine's major cities was full of energy, culture, and a unique mix of the old and new. Ukraine's cities, like Kyiv, Lviv, and Odessa, were places where history and modern life came together in an exciting way, creating vibrant communities with their own character. Kyiv, the capital, was the beating heart of Ukraine. It was a city that never slept. You could walk through the cobbled streets of its historic center and feel the pulse of the past. The golden domes of churches and the ancient walls of castles told stories of centuries gone by. But Kyiv wasn't just about history. It was a city constantly evolving, filled with modern energy. As you walked through the busy streets, you'd see high-rise buildings and trendy cafes tucked into every corner. The nightlife in Kyiv was famous, with people gathering at rooftop bars overlooking the Dnieper River, enjoying cocktails while taking in the stunning views. There was always something happening, whether it was a street festival, a concert, or simply a group of friends meeting up at a cozy cafe. People in Kyiv were always on the move, balancing their busy urban lives with a strong connection to their history and traditions. Then there was Lviv, a city with a completely different vibe. Lviv was like a living museum, filled with old-world charm and a unique Eastern European feel. Its cobbled streets, old buildings, and colorful market squares made it feel like you were stepping back in time. But the city also had a modern, trendy side to it, especially when it came to food and coffee. Lviv was known for its coffee culture. Many cafes there had been around for generations, serving some of the best coffee in the world. Can you imagine walking through Lviv's old town with a warm cup of coffee in your hand, the streets alive with music, street performers, and the laughter of people enjoying the day? It was that kind of place, a mix of history and modern day comfort. Lviv felt like a city stuck in a beautiful, timeless moment, where old traditions met the energy of young people. Odessa, a coastal city by the Black Sea, brought a completely different vibe to Ukraine's urban life. Odessa had a Russian-French flair, a place where the culture of the Mediterranean met the influences of Eastern Europe. The city's stunning architecture, with its grand buildings and wide boulevards, gave it an almost regal feel. But what made Odessa truly special was its relaxed coastal atmosphere. People would stroll along the famous Potemkin steps, enjoying the sea breeze, or spend their evenings by the beach watching the sunset over the Black Sea. Odessa had a laid-back energy, but it was still a vibrant city with a rich cultural life. The cafes, theaters, and galleries offered a mix of high culture and street-level entertainment. The nightlife was lively, with people enjoying the warm nights by the sea and outdoor restaurants and bars, dancing to music that filled the air. Odessa was where many Ukrainians went to escape the busyness of the larger cities, offering a refreshing coastal retreat. Each of these cities, Kyiv, Lviv, and Odessa, had its own unique atmosphere, but they shared a common thread, a strong sense of community. People in these cities weren't just going about their day-to-day lives. They were living with purpose, enjoying the culture around them, and celebrating their connections to each other. Whether you were walking through the historic streets of Kyiv, sipping coffee in one of Lviv's iconic cafes, or taking in the sunset in Odessa, life was about embracing the moment, surrounded by the rich history and beauty of the country. But as the conflict began to unfold, much of this daily life started to change. The bustling streets, the laughter in the cafes, the sense of community, all of that slowly started to fade. The spirit of Ukraine's major cities, which once thrived on warmth, hospitality, and a rich cultural life, was now at risk of being lost. It's hard to imagine now, but life in these cities was full of joy, of people celebrating the simple things, walking through a park, enjoying a meal with friends, or simply taking a moment to appreciate the beauty of their surroundings. It's those moments that make you realize just how much has changed. As time goes on, we can't forget what Ukraine once was. The energy of Kyiv, the charm of Lviv, and the relaxed beauty of Odessa. These cities were more than just places to visit. They were alive with people who loved their country and shared that love with anyone who visited. And it's that spirit we must remember. Ukrainian cuisine. A taste of life, Ukrainian cuisine is more than just food. It's a part of the country's heart and soul. Food in Ukraine isn't just about filling your stomach. It's about tradition, family, and hospitality. From the rich, hearty soups to the delicious pastries, every meal tells a story about Ukraine's history and culture. Ukrainian food is comforting, flavorful, and designed to make you feel like part of the family. If you've never had the pleasure of enjoying a meal in Ukraine, you're missing out on one of the best parts of the country. Let's talk food for a second. You haven't truly lived until you've had borscht, the iconic Ukrainian soup. If there's one dish that sums up Ukrainian cuisine, it's borscht. This hearty beetroot soup is made with a mix of vegetables, meat, and a little bit of love. It's the kind of soup that warms you from the inside out. But beware, ask for it in Kyiv, and you'll be served a version so hot it could melt the spoon. Ukrainians don't just serve their borscht hot, they serve it with a side of pride. It's not just about how it tastes, but how much heart goes into making it. And don't forget the dollop of sour cream that finishes off the bowl, making it creamy and perfect. Have you ever tried borscht? No? You're missing out, trust me. It's the kind of dish that makes you feel like you found comfort in a bowl. But borscht isn't the only dish that shows how much Ukrainians love their food. Another popular dish is vareniki, also known as pierogi in other parts of Eastern Europe. These dumplings are filled with everything from potatoes and cheese to meat, mushrooms, or even fruits like cherries. Vareniki are often served with a generous amount of sour cream or fried onions on top. They're a perfect example of how Ukrainian cuisine is simple but full of flavor. Whether you're eating them with a savory filling or a sweet one, they're a real treat. And let's be honest, no one can say no to a plate of warm vareniki fresh out of the pot. Then there's holubtsi, the delicious stuffed cabbage rolls that are a staple in Ukrainian homes. These rolls are made with minced meat, rice, and spices, all wrapped up in tender cabbage leaves and then simmered in a rich tomato sauce. It's the kind of dish that's perfect for family gatherings, and you'll often find them served during holidays or special occasions. There's something about the way the cabbage wraps all the flavors together that makes each bite feel like home. Ukrainians know how to take simple ingredients and turn them into something extraordinary, and holubtsi are a perfect example of that. Ukrainians also have a sweet tooth, and they make some of the most delicious pastries you'll ever taste. Kyiv cake, named after the capital, is one of the country's most famous desserts. It's a layered meringue cake filled with rich buttercream and crunchy nuts. Every bite is a combination of sweet, creamy, and crunchy. Everything you could want in a dessert. And if you're in the mood for something smaller, you can't go wrong with pampushki, the fluffy, sugary donuts that are often served with garlic sauce alongside a bowl of borscht. Yes, you read that right. Sweet donuts and garlic sauce. It might sound strange, but it's a perfect combination that you have to try at least once. Now, let's talk about shashlik, the Ukrainian version of grilled meat. Whether it's chicken, pork, or beef, shashlik is marinated in a delicious mixture of herbs, spices, and sometimes even beer before being grilled to perfection. The result? A juicy, flavorful piece of meat that's perfect for a barbecue with friends. It's a popular dish during summer months, when Ukrainians gather in parks or backyards to enjoy the warm weather and each other's company. Sharing a plate of shashlik with friends, alongside a cold drink and some laughter, is a memory you won't forget. Food in Ukraine isn't just about satisfying hunger, it's about connection. Meals are often shared with family, friends, and even strangers who are welcomed with open arms. Ukrainian hospitality is legendary, and no matter where you go, you'll always be offered something to eat. In fact, refusing food in Ukraine is almost unheard of. It's a way of showing love and appreciation. It's not just about the food itself, it's about the gesture of sharing a meal with someone. In Ukraine, food brings people together. Whether it's a bowl of borscht or a plate of vareniki, every dish is a celebration of the country's culture and the warmth of its people. The flavors are bold, the portions are generous, and the love that goes into every meal is something that stays with you long after the last bite. So, next time you're in Ukraine, don't just eat the food, experience it. Trust me, you'll never forget it. Ukraine's natural beauty. Ukraine is more than just its cities. It's a land blessed with stunning natural beauty, offering something for every kind of nature lover. From the towering peaks of the Carpathian Mountains to the peaceful beaches of Crimea, the country's landscapes are as diverse as they are breathtaking. If you love the great outdoors, Ukraine was a place where you could easily immerse yourself in nature, whether you were hiking through forests, wandering across wide fields, or relaxing by the sea. One of the country's most spectacular features is the Carpathian Mountains, which stretch across the western part of Ukraine. These mountains are a nature lover's dream, with their lush forests, clear rivers, and breathtaking views. The air here is so fresh, it's like breathing in pure peace. Imagine hiking along mountain trails, surrounded by tall trees and the sound of birds chirping overhead. In the spring and summer, the Carpathians are filled with wildflowers, turning the landscape into a patchwork of colors. And in winter, when snow covers the mountains, it becomes a perfect spot for skiing and snowboarding. Whether you're an adventurer or someone who just wants to relax and take in the views, the Carpathians offer a peaceful escape from the busy world. But Ukraine is not just about mountains. In the south, you'll find the Black Sea and its coastal cities like Odessa, which are famous for their warm, sandy beaches. Odessa was the kind of place where you could take a morning stroll along the coastline, feel the cool sea breeze on your face, and then relax by the beach with a book in the afternoon. The beaches here are perfect for those who want to unwind, and the laid-back atmosphere made it an ideal getaway. The coastline is dotted with charming resorts, small villages, and beautiful parks, all adding to the peaceful vibe of the area. And then there's Crimea, which was once one of Ukraine's most beloved tourist destinations. With its mix of beaches, mountains, and historical sites, Crimea was a paradise for nature lovers. The southern coast, with its warm Mediterranean climate, made it a perfect place to relax by the sea. The beaches there were popular for their clear blue waters, and the surrounding hills provided stunning backdrops for sunbathers and hikers alike. Imagine spending your mornings swimming in the sea and your afternoons hiking up the Crimean Mountains, enjoying views of the water, fair, below. It's the kind of place that made you feel like you had stepped into a dream. Ukraine is also home to a number of national parks and protected areas, making it a haven for wildlife and plant life. From the dense forests of the Polessia region in the north to the wetlands in the Danube Delta, Ukraine offers diverse ecosystems that attract a wide variety of animals and plants. The country's natural reserves are not only beautiful, but also important for preserving wildlife. Birdwatchers, for example, could enjoy spotting rare species in places like the Askania Nova Biosphere Reserve, where you might catch a glimpse of wild horses or cranes soaring through the sky. For those who enjoy a slower pace, Ukraine also has its share of beautiful lakes and rivers. The Dnieper River, which flows through the heart of the country, offers picturesque spots where you can relax by the water, take a boat ride, or simply enjoy the beauty of the surrounding nature. One of the most peaceful places to visit was Lake Sinevere, located in the Carpathians. It's the kind of place where you can sit by the water, breathe in the crisp mountain air, and listen to the quiet ripples of the lake. The surrounding forest, filled with towering trees, made it a magical spot for those looking to escape into nature. Ukraine's natural beauty wasn't just about its famous landmarks, it was also in the quiet moments, like watching a sunset over the Carpathian Mountains or taking a stroll through a forest filled with the sounds of nature. The country was a place where you could be immersed in beauty at every turn, whether it was the vast, open fields of the steppe, the green hillsides, or the calm, deep blue waters of the Black Sea. Nature in Ukraine wasn't just a backdrop, it was part of the daily life of the people, and it created a sense of peace and harmony that was hard to find elsewhere. If you were ever lucky enough to experience the natural beauty of Ukraine, you'd know just how special it was. The landscape was so varied, and the sights were so stunning that it felt like you could go on an adventure every day. You could go hiking in the mountains one day, enjoy a sunny beach the next, and still find time to relax by a lake or explore a forest. It was the kind of place that made you appreciate the world around you, and it's hard to forget the feeling of standing in a place so beautiful that it felt almost magical. Now, with everything that's happened, that peaceful, natural side of Ukraine is something many people wish they could have experienced again. It's a reminder of the country's true beauty, a beauty that still lives in the hearts of the people. Ukrainian spirit and the people Ukrainians are known for their strength and resilience, qualities that have been passed down through generations. But what truly sets them apart from many other people in Europe is their endless generosity and warmth. If you've ever visited Ukraine, you would know exactly what I mean, whether it's offering you their last piece of bread or inviting you to a local festival. The people of Ukraine are rich in heart as much as the land is in history. The Ukrainian spirit is one of endurance, warmth, and a deep connection to family, community, and country. It's a spirit that shines brightest in moments of hardship, when Ukrainians rise above challenges with a sense of unity and pride. Ukraine has faced countless challenges throughout its long history, from invasions and wars to political unrest and economic struggles. Yet, despite these hardships, the people have always remained resilient. There is a deep sense of pride in being Ukrainian, and this pride is rooted in the country's history and culture. It's a pride that isn't always loud or boastful, but it's there, quietly present in the way people carry themselves and in the way they hold on to their traditions. Ukrainians have a quiet strength that comes from surviving and thriving despite the odds stacked against them. It's this strength that has allowed the country to rebuild and grow time and time again. But it's not just strength that defines Ukrainians, it's also their warmth. Ukrainians are incredibly hospitable people, and their hospitality is something that stays with you long after you've left their homes. It's not just about offering a cup of tea or a meal. It's about making you feel welcome, no matter who you are or where you come from. If you're ever invited into a Ukrainian home, expect to be treated like family. Whether it's a stranger or a lifelong friend, the warmth of a Ukrainian welcome is unmatched. It's the kind of hospitality that makes you feel like you belong, even if you're miles away from your own home. This generosity is also evident in the way Ukrainians share their celebrations and festivals with others. Ukrainians love to gather with family and friends to celebrate their traditions, and they're always eager to share these celebrations with visitors. Take Kupala Night, for example, a traditional Ukrainian celebration of summer. People gather to sing, dance, and light bonfires, celebrating the warmth of the sun and the joy of life. The spirit of togetherness is at the heart of the festival, and whether you're Ukrainian or not, you're welcomed with open arms to join in the fun. This sense of community is a central part of Ukrainian life, and it's one of the things that make the country so special. But it's not just at festivals that Ukrainians show their warmth. Every day, in cities and villages across the country, Ukrainians greet one another with a smile and a kind word. There's a deep sense of connection to others, and this extends to how they treat strangers. If you're lost in a Ukrainian city, don't be surprised if someone offers to help, even if you don't ask. If you stop to ask for directions, people will often go out of their way to make sure you get where you need to go, even if it means walking you there themselves. It's this natural kindness and sense of community that make Ukraine such a welcoming place for visitors. The resilience of the Ukrainian people is also reflected in their deep love for their country. Ukrainians have always been proud of their land, from the vast steppes to the lush forests, and they have a deep connection to the history and culture that shaped their identity. This love for their country is not just about pride in their heritage. It's about a deep-rooted sense of responsibility to preserve and protect their land for future generations. Ukrainians have a strong connection to their roots, and this connection is reflected in their respect for their history, their culture, and their families. Family plays a central role in Ukrainian life. The family is the heart of the community, and it's where much of the warmth and love come from. Families are close-knit, and it's not uncommon for several generations to live together under one roof. Meals are often shared with extended family and friends, and no one ever leaves. The table hungry. The bonds between family members are incredibly strong, and the support that family members provide for each other is something that stands out in Ukrainian culture. Family gatherings are filled with laughter, stories, and, of course, plenty of food. It's a place where everyone feels valued and cared for, and the love within a Ukrainian family is something that never fades. Even in the face of difficult circumstances, the Ukrainian people remain optimistic. They face challenges with a sense of humor, and it's common to hear laughter and lighthearted jokes, even when times are tough. Ukrainians know how to find joy in the small moments, and this ability to appreciate life, no matter what, is part of what makes them so special. Whether it's enjoying a sunny day in a park, dancing at a wedding, or sharing a quiet evening with friends, Ukrainians make the most of every moment. They understand the value of connection, of spending time with loved ones, and of enjoying the simple pleasures in life. Through it all, Ukrainians have proven time and time again that they are a people who can endure, who can rise above adversity, and who can do so with warmth, kindness, and a deep love for their country. It's this spirit that has kept Ukraine alive and thriving, even in the toughest of times. And as the country continues to face challenges, it's the strength and warmth of the Ukrainian people that will keep it going. Ukrainians may face difficult days ahead, but their spirit, unbroken and strong, will continue to shine, a beacon of hope for the future. For many, Ukraine was a place of vibrant cities, rich history, and welcoming people. Its culture was thriving, and the spirit of the country felt alive in every corner, from the bustling streets of Kyiv to the peaceful shores of the Black Sea. But as time passed, subtle shifts began to take place. At first, these changes were so small that many didn't notice them. But little by little, the lines on the horizon began to blur. Political tensions started rising, and the once peaceful atmosphere of Ukraine began to feel less stable. What was once a place of joy, art, and culture began to change, and the world hardly noticed. Some people were starting to feel the unease in the air. In the cities, you could sense that things weren't quite the same. People started talking less, freely about their hopes for the future. Where there was once laughter in cafes and lively street markets, there were now more quiet conversations, more whispers about the future. It wasn't as open and carefree as it once was. The vibrant arts scene, which had defined Ukraine for so long, began to fade. Artists, musicians, and performers who once filled the streets with their work became more cautious, unsure of how far they could go with their creativity. This slow decline wasn't something that happened overnight. It was a gradual shift, one that seemed almost imperceptible until you looked back and realized how much had changed. The growing political tensions were at the heart of this transformation. Ukraine has always had a complicated political landscape, with competing interests from both the East and the West. But over the years, these tensions started to grow sharper. More and more people in Ukraine began to feel the pressure of these divisions. The unity that once defined the country started to break down as political struggles intensified. With the rise of nationalism in some parts of the country and the increasing influence of foreign powers, the feeling of stability that had once held Ukraine together began to weaken. People began to take sides more openly, and that sense of national pride and shared culture seemed to give way to division. Even as these political tensions grew, the country's economy also began to feel the strain. Ukraine had long been a nation of hard-working people, but the economic struggles of the 21st century began to take their toll. Job opportunities became scarcer, and many young people began to leave for other countries in search of better prospects. This migration added to the feeling of uncertainty, as more and more people left behind their homes and families in search of something better. The once vibrant cities, filled with energy and opportunity, began to feel quieter and emptier as the country's youth sought new lives elsewhere. What was even more unsettling was how the world seemed to turn its back on Ukraine as these changes were happening. For many years, Ukraine was seen as a distant country, overshadowed by the larger, more powerful nations in Europe. The world watched Ukraine from a distance, paying attention only when there was a crisis, but ignoring the quiet shifts happening within the country. The political tensions, the economic struggles, and the rise of division were happening right before the world's eyes, but the focus was always elsewhere. Ukraine's transformation went unnoticed by many, and by the time the world started to take notice, it was already too late. It's terrifying to think that a country full of life can be erased from memory almost overnight. When people think of Ukraine today, they often think of conflict, destruction, and loss. But before the shadows of war took hold, Ukraine was a place of culture, warmth, and hope. And yet, all of that has been overshadowed by the devastation that followed. What was once a nation of joy and creativity, full of people proud of their heritage, has been left to deal with the consequences of a war that few saw coming. And it's not just the land that's affected by this conflict, it's the people, the spirit of the country, the warmth, the culture, the laughter, all of that is at risk of being lost in the noise of war. The Ukrainian people's resilience is being tested like never before. But they are not fighting just for their land. They are fighting for their way of life, for the future they imagined, and for the history they hold dear. As the conflict unfolded, the world became distracted by the immediate consequences of war, focusing on the destruction, the loss of life, and the humanitarian crisis that followed. But what was forgotten in all of this was the Ukraine that existed before the war, the country that was filled with vibrant arts, culture, and history, the people who were known for their warmth and hospitality, the cities that never slept, and the countryside that was a peaceful retreat for those seeking respite. This Ukraine, full of life and possibilities, was slipping away. The slow decline that began with political tensions and economic struggles eventually turned into a crisis that the world could no longer ignore. But by then, so much of what made Ukraine unique had been lost. The gradual nature of this transformation makes it all the more tragic. It wasn't just one moment, one event, that caused this shift. It was a slow erosion of everything that made Ukraine a beautiful, vibrant country. It's easy to look back and say we should have done more, that we should have noticed the signs earlier. But the reality is that Ukraine's decline was happening in plain sight, and yet it was missed by many. By the time the world started to pay attention, the country had already begun to change, and the forces that would lead to war were already in motion. The fear now is that Ukraine will be defined only by the conflict it faces, and that the beauty, culture, and spirit of the country will be forgotten in the rush of headlines and news reports. It's terrifying to think that a country so full of life, so full of history and culture, could be reduced to just a story of war and destruction. But it's not too late to remember what Ukraine was before the shadows of war fell across it. The country still has a rich history, a vibrant culture, and a resilient people. And it's that spirit, that warmth, that we must hold on to and remind the world of as the story of Ukraine continues to unfold. The echoes of what was and what can still be should not be forgotten. Before the war, Ukraine wasn't just another European country. It was a symbol of resilience, beauty, and a deep sense of belonging. A place where the past and future lived side by side, where culture and modernity coexisted in the most remarkable ways. Ukraine was not defined by just one thing. It was a nation that celebrated everything from art and food to music and history. A country where people were proud of their heritage and hopeful for the future. It was a place where cities like Kyiv, Lviv, and Odessa were alive with the kind of energy you can't help but feel when you're surrounded by warmth and life. So, what does it mean to forget a country like this? A country that was once a shining example of cultural richness and human connection. In the rush to focus on the present, to react to the immediate crisis, we sometimes forget to remember what came before. We forget that behind every headline, every breaking news story, there was a Ukraine filled with people who lived, loved, worked, and dreamed just like anyone else. The people of Ukraine were not just victims of a war. They were vibrant, strong, creative individuals who built a country that the world admired. And now, much of that has been overshadowed by the tragedy of war. What can we learn from Ukraine's past? For one, we can learn the importance of resilience. Ukraine's history is filled with hardship, yet through it all, the people found ways to endure. Their spirit was never broken. Even when political tensions rose, or when the economy struggled, Ukrainians continued to live with pride, warmth, and generosity. They faced challenges, but they also created beauty out of hardship. The rich cultural traditions, the strong sense of community, the deep love for their land and history. These were the things that defined Ukraine before the war, and these are the things we should remember and hold on to, as they reflect the strength and humanity that can emerge even in the darkest times. We can also learn about the importance of connection and community. Ukraine was never just a country of isolated individuals. It was a place where people came together to support one another, to share meals, laughter, and stories. It was a country where hospitality was more than just a tradition. It was a way of life. Whether it was welcoming strangers into homes, celebrating festivals together, or just sitting around a table with family and friends, the people of Ukraine understood the importance of building connections with others. This deep sense of community is something the world can learn from, especially in times when divisions seem to grow. In Ukraine, there was a spirit of togetherness that allowed people to endure even the toughest of times. What do we owe to the people who lived there? We owe them the respect of remembering their stories, their culture, and the lives they led before war came to their doorstep. We owe them the opportunity to be seen for what they were, not just for the tragedy that has struck them. It's easy to define a country by its suffering, but that doesn't give the full picture. Ukraine's people were full of life, creativity, and dreams. They were not defined by war. They were defined by their culture, their history, and their love for one another. We owe it to them to remember the beauty of what they created, to honor the memories of their cities, their traditions, and their vibrant communities. But as the world moves forward, there is a fear that Ukraine will forever be defined by the shadows of war. It's heartbreaking to think that a country that once thrived with art, music, and culture will now be remembered only for the destruction it faced. So, we have to ask ourselves, what does it mean for a country's history to be erased? Can a country rebuild its identity after everything has been taken from it? Will Ukraine ever be the same again, or will it forever be defined by the shadows of war? These are questions that don't have easy answers, but they are important ones to consider. Because what happens to Ukraine affects more than just the country. It affects the world. It affects how we see resilience, beauty, and hope in the face of hardship. It affects how we understand what it means to lose something precious and what we can do to help preserve it. Ukraine is not just a place on a map. It is a story that still needs to be told. It is a story of hope, of culture, of strength, and of people who refuse to be defined by their struggles. Even in the midst of war, the spirit of Ukraine is alive, carried on by the people who still hold on to the memories of what was. We must never forget that there was more to Ukraine than the conflict. It was a country full of life, love, and culture. And as we move forward, we must make sure that the world remembers what Ukraine once was and what it can still become. The road ahead may be difficult, but the lessons of the past are clear. No matter what happens, the spirit of Ukraine cannot be erased. So, what do you think? Will Ukraine ever be the same again? Or will it forever be defined by the shadows of war? We can all have our own thoughts on this, but one thing is certain: Ukraine's story is far from over. The world can choose to remember its vibrant past, its resilient people, and its deep cultural roots. It can choose to recognize the importance of preserving the things that make Ukraine special. And maybe, just maybe, that will be the first step toward helping the country heal and rebuild.